welcome to Good Game, the show for gamers by gamers. I'm Bajo.
And I'm Hex. Ready to return to the grid this week, Bajo?
I am ready to put the pedal on the metal, Hex.
Well, then you'll be nice and prepared for our review of Grid 2.
Changing gears. Also, we see how the EVE universe expands into FPS with Dust 514.
Joy, hostile NCC.
And we stock up on snacks in Don't Starve. But first, can you guess the game for this week? Can you go read the news?
Okay.
Go on, go on.
Good game.
Hi there, Bajo here. Microsoft has officially unveiled their new next-gen console, the Xbox One.
Xbox, go home.
It's pitched as an all-in-one entertainment device with an emphasis on multitasking games and entertainment.
And here's how he helps me dominate the fantasy league with plays like that.
Rumours of always online requirements and anti-used games systems weren't directly addressed in the presentation, and mixed reports have since emerged. Games will be playable offline, however the console will apparently require an internet connection at least once every 24 hours. It releases worldwide later this year in all major markets. Electronic Arts has announced that they are not currently developing any games for the Wii U. This even includes typically multi-platform EA sports games such as FIFA and Madden. EA previously claimed wide support for the console at the Wii U announcement and released several games such as Mass Effect 3 and Need for Speed Most Wanted. However, that support now seems to have ceased. Bob Sumwell, a senior software engineer for EA, even went so far as to tweet, "The Wii U is crap, Nintendo are walking dead at this point." His tweets have since been deleted. Following Assassin's Creed creator Patrice Désilets' termination from Ubisoft, development on his game 1666 has been suspended indefinitely. According to sources, the move to suspend development rather than simply cancel it allows Ubisoft to effectively cancel the game without having to give the intellectual property back to Désilets. Désilets' contract specifies the IP would return to him in the event of the game's cancellation, and it appears he is now seeking legal action.
Good game.
There's certainly a growing appeal for open-world survival games where your only objective is simply to survive the perilous environment. This game is called Don't Starve, which is the only helper advice you're given once it starts.
You begin playing as Wilson, an odd character with eccentric hair. But there are other characters you can unlock the longer you manage to stay alive. Similar to games like Terraria or Minecraft, the setting of the sun brings with it some pretty nasty terrors. Or in this case, instant death. So you must immediately make use of the wee daylight hours to gather the necessary materials needed for a basic campfire and find yourself some food.
Yeah, this is relatively easy to do initially. Most creatures that you encounter are passive and won't attack you unless you attack them, at which point you'll take a pretty hefty beating. So you're pretty much free to roam and gather. You'll need twigs and a flint for an axe, which then allow you to cut trees for logs and harvest grasses to get your fire going.
After that, you can set about building bigger and more exciting things, but to do that you'll need a science machine, which unlocks individual crafting plans when you stand near it.
Yeah, it took me a while to work that out though. I mean, for ages I was just wandering around, chopping down trees, going, what else is there to do here? Before I realised that standing next to that thing was opening up all of these crafting opportunities. But I managed to make myself a trendy grass suit, a hat, some traps to catch animals so I could cook some meat, and a chest and a backpack for storage. So you settle into that familiar zone of hunting and collecting to see what else you can craft for yourself.
And here's where you can run into trouble, because most of the materials that you'll be using also are to make a basic fire. And when dusk hits and you realise you used your last log to build a useless fence, you have to quickly run out into the forest and chop down some more trees.
Yeah, but then your axe breaks and you don't have another piece of flint to make an axe, so you gotta try and find a flint, and then just night comes and it's all over.
That sudden sense of urgency is so intense, isn't it? Death is devastating because you lose everything. And you know that your #1 rule should be always have enough mats for a fire, but you don't do it, you just feel stupid. And that's because the nature of this game is such that it's so easy to get caught up in making other things, especially as daylight hours are so limited.
If you find a resurrection stone, you have one shot and one shot only at being brought back to life from that stone, so you can get back to your corpse and retrieve your precious belongings. Your health does take quite a hit though, and it's so hard to get it back up again.
Yeah, you can regain health with certain rare items and also by eating food, and cooked food gives you a little bit more, but it's still a very small percentage and it's painfully slow going trying to get your health back. I got a bit frustrated with that.
Yeah, especially since so many of the animals you have to fight to get the meat to then cook the item that gives you more health will generally kill you in the process anyway, so Sometimes, though, the game does throw you a bone where you'll come across creatures that are fighting other creatures within the game, and if you stick around, you can pick up the tasty remains.
This is one of those games where you have to be committed to that repeated process of crafting and harvesting, because quite often you get back to square one and you have to do all that over and over and over again. But there is that self-competitive element of trying to break your record and have one more go and get a bit further each time.
Yeah, and so many of those failures come from just dumb mistakes as well. But you do learn from those mistakes and become more confident that the next time is going to be the one where you succeed and stay alive for just one more day. And like so many of these kinds of games, the world is randomly generated and huge. There's so much of it to explore, and the fact that it's all covered by fog of war means you're always enticed by the unknown, forever keen to venture further and wider.
You can use wormholes to teleport from one part of the map to another, and sometimes this can be an easy shortcut to specific materials you might need. But if you've created a little safe haven for yourself, the further away you get from it, the more dangerous things are.
Yeah, I need a better system for setting traps. I was always dropping them all over the place then forgetting where I'd left them. It is always exciting though when you return to one of them and find that you've snagged a tasty rabbit. That said, staying on top of hunger has got to be the least of your worries, especially for a game called Don't Starve. I mean, it may look cute, but I can't stress enough what a soul-destroying environment this is.
That's what I like about it. If you really are struggling, you can create a customized environment to make things easier on yourself. You can populate it with more materials, creatures, resurrection stones, and possibly the biggest blessing is just being able to adjust the day-night cycle. You can have it so the days are really long and the nights are really short, but I think this kind of defeats the purpose of the game. It does make it easier for you, but it doesn't make it any more enjoyable.
Yeah, I think that sort of thing is better for making tiny tweaks rather than all-out game remodels, but it's nice that they've included that. The world itself has a really great design to it, I thought, almost with a Tim Burton-inspired, hand-drawn style to the animation. For me though, personally, I don't think I'd go back to it because I think it needs a co-op element to really make it enjoyable, and from what I've read, the devs have no intention of adding that. You know, this is a game that challenges you in really frustrating ways, and without a friend along to share in that frustration, it was a bit of a lonely and punishing experience, so I'm giving it 5.5 out of 10.
I agree that a co-op option would have been nice, but I liked how punishing it was. I like that you're kind of stuck on your own, and I have a fondness for games where you need to learn from your environment around you just to survive, so I'm going to give it 7.5. Now, who is ready for some tiny power?
I am.
Me too. The phrase all things to all people now has its own dance. It's called the Normcraft.
I hated it. 0 rubber chickens.
0 from me too.
Norm, you've not been outside in 6 months! And I won't lie, the day spa below are complaining about the dandruff build-up. But don't worry, I've had an idea. It might help your recovery if you express your feelings about rejection in a text-based adventure. I know they're your favorite type of game. Norm, can you hear me? Okay, well, my second idea. Well, actually, it was Aaron's. Well, I've hired a prostitute that looks a lot like Megan. Well, a little like Megan. Anyway, I didn't quite think this one through. Yes, ma'am. I'm asking. Just a second. Norm, could you slide $200 under the door? Yes, hold on. Norm, can you hear me? Now put down that... Ah!
Good game.
More Tiny Power next week. EVE Online is one of the granddaddies of the MMO world, offering its extremely dedicated players a vast universe of overwhelming possibilities for over 10 years.
And now the series is branching out and getting down and dirty with FPS in Dust 514.
Welcome, soldier. You're about to jump into a galaxy of opportunity, wealth, destruction, and death.
first of all, we should state that we are not EVE players. I mean, we've briefly dipped our toes into its waters a few times over the years, but I think the sheer scale of it all and the time and just the commitment required, it's a tad daunting.
Yes, I have made it halfway through the game's tutorial, however. The EVE community are some of the most dedicated gamers around the world. They even have their own government called the Council of Stellar Management, and every now and then the developer flies elected members from this government to Iceland to talk about potential changes in the game, and if that is not dedication, I don't know what is.
Yeah, so we apologise to the die-hard EVE fans out there, but your game is massive and intricate and complicated, and we'll probably say something wrong or miss some amazing fact somewhere along the way. So now that we've covered ourselves, why don't we talk about the game?
Yeah.
So Dust 514 is an online-only shooter, which at first glance doesn't seem particularly different from any other team-based shooter out there. But it is free to play, and it's great to see more quality free to play games coming to consoles.
Yes, there's your standard classes, assault, medic, snipers, and matches are played out on fairly large maps, usually with 16 players a side. Although apparently it supports up to 48 players, but we never found a match that big.
There are a few game modes, including a team deathmatch, but mostly you'll be playing a capture the point mode, where taking a point activates a large missile battery that will start attacking the enemy's command ship.
Mission accomplished. Hostile MCC destroyed.
And the first team to take down the enemy ship wins.
I think it's fair to say that we've seen this kind of game 100 times before, but that's not a bad thing. The shooting is solid, weapons sound great, lag isn't much of an issue, and almost anyone can jump in without being daunted by the complexity of the EVE universe.
But make no mistake, that complexity is there, just ticking away behind its pew-pew shooter facade. Because this isn't an FPS set in the EVE universe, it's actually in the EVE universe.
Yes, and EVE and Dust actually run on the very same server, so they're both intricately linked. Every player in Dust is basically a mercenary, and EVE Online players can hire them to take control of planets. EVE players can even assist their mercs and bombard the battlefield from space. As EVE players like to say, we fly and they die.
I just love that idea, having players in one game attack players in a different game. I mean, that's so cool. Although, admittedly, after a whole day's worth of play, I only saw one bombardment and it didn't actually hit anyone, but it was still really cool.
Still cool. You actually start with a healthy amount of cash and XP, and you'll need both to start leveling, since you have to first buy the skill book, and only then can you invest the XP into leveling.
And the devs claim it'll take about 7 years to max out all your skills, so you'll really want to choose your skills wisely. We went for the obvious grunt option and maxed out all our armor and assault rifle skills to start with.
There's a unique take on the inventory system as well. Basically, you create and customize drop suits, which are essentially loadouts. Each drop suit has a certain number of slots for putting everything in, from your main weapon to your sidearm to your damage modifiers and special abilities. And you need to level the right skills to equip bigger and better gear.
Yeah, but when you buy new gear, it's essentially a one-use deal, because when you die, everything you've equipped is gone. They do give you an infinite amount of starter drop suits, so you'll always be able to play with those. But if you really want to kit yourself out, then you'd better make good use of it, because you only get one shot at it.
You know, at first this rang some alarm bells with me, because it sounds like it's a ploy to get more money from players. But replenishing loadouts just costs a tiny fraction of what you'll earn from a single match. So unless you're going in with the top tier of gear and dying a lot, you'll rarely make a loss from playing. And when you've got cash riding on every life, it suddenly makes things very intense. Kind of like when you add real money to a poker game.
Yeah, it's a solid free-to-play model without any real pay-to-win mechanics. But for those of you who do want to part with some real-world cash to get ahead, you have a few options. You could buy a pack which gives a variety of loot, like an endless supply of one drop suit and assault rifle that are marginally better than what you get for free, as well as a bunch of premium currency known as Aurum. And you can simply buy bundles of premium cash if you want.
You can spend Aurum on gear that you wouldn't normally be allowed to use because it's a bit high level. And while that may seem like an easy way to get ahead, anyone who invests the time and actually levels up their skills will end up with access to a wider selection of quality gear.
Yeah, and you can't buy bundles of XP or anything like that either, but you can buy XP boosters. Much like in EVE, you can actually earn XP when you're not even playing. So here you can buy a passive booster which will give you about 1/3 more XP when not playing, or an active one which gives you more XP from matches. And that's really all you can use the premium cash for, so that's nothing that's out of reach for players that really just want to invest their time.
I do like the gritty sci-fi world these maps are set in. There's plenty of room for vehicles to move around and sniper spots, but it's not the prettiest game I've ever seen. But I think it's okay.
MCC shields failed.
It's interesting that it's a PS3 exclusive.
Yeah, I mean, you'd think they would include at least a PC version, given that the PS4 is just around the corner and the uncertainty of backwards compatibility. You know, does this game have a limited shelf life?
Yeah, I do like that you can plug in a mouse and keyboard, though. That certainly helped me. I guess they looked at their community and thought, how can we expand this universe in a way that may get new players into it, and FPS is a way to do that. It's still strange that it's just on one console, though. I guess it's a unique idea, and they're trying new things.
Yeah, and I guess when you think about games like Defiance, which are hooking in a TV show with their MMO, and of course there is a TV show coming for Eve as well, so maybe they're looking to do the same thing and have multi-cross-platform integration.
It's the way of the future.
Yeah, I wonder if we could do that with Good Game. Maybe we could have some kind of live Twitter feed updates, or while people are playing games, we could be analysing them,
We could pop in.
critiquing them
We could
while
have
they
little-
play. So our faces could
Yeah.
pop up while they're gaming and be like, "Hi, I see you're playing Bioshock Infinite."
Yeah, watch out for this
One-
next bit where this happens. It's
One thing I
awesome.
thought about this moment.
Oh, this next bit's
Watch out for
crap.
that
And then,
guy.
like the toaster guy in Mortal Kombat, we could just slide in and go, this bit's great, and then leave.
Like the Microsoft paperclip.
Yeah.
Oh, the most annoying thing in the
I
world.
think this is the worst idea we've ever had.
Mission failed. MCC destroyed.
Final thoughts, Hex?
Well, it hooks you in with solid shooting and then keeps you there with loads of unlocks and deep progression. Plus, it's free, so I'm giving it 8.5 out of 10.
I'm giving it 8.5 as well.
Good game.
Gotham City, birthplace of a young boy destined to become the world's greatest detective, can be summed up in one single word: dark. 2 words, very dark. Forever viewed through the blackest of night and thickest of haze, Gotham is a reflection of Batman himself. The city is a broken character. Once proud and strong, it's now in a constant battle with corruption and greed. But it's always pushing back, rejecting oppression and surviving through the harshest of punishments. The architecture of the city is a collision of Art Deco, neo-Gothic, and postmodernist styling. But merely talking about the design and the visuals of its monolithic skyscrapers doesn't really capture the mood. The city looms over you the same way a stoic old man with a dark, mysterious past might. There are secrets buried deep in the concrete and iron and brick and stone that make up this icon of the industrial age. Gotham is probably best described by long-term Batman writer Dennis O'Neil, who said, "It's Manhattan, below 14th Street, 11 minutes past midnight, on the coldest night in November." Like any great city, fact or fiction, Gotham has its landmarks. The horrific memory of Crime Alley, the fear and insanity of Arkham Asylum, the empty loneliness of Wayne Manor, and Ace Chemicals, birthplace of a clown. Many of her residents are a product of the city itself. In a jungle of depression, opportunity, and evil, many have turned to crime, either becoming simply survivors or the most dangerous and cunning of foes. Foes that fill the city's endless boulevards. This is how Gotham has most often been interpreted in gaming over the past 30 years, as a never-ending, flat background that simply plays as a set piece. But we are getting closer to the gates of Gotham. We're starting to see glimpses. And maybe that's because we finally understand that Gotham's not just about what's on the surface, but what's behind the mask that gives the city its character. Gotham is a city of layers. Layers made with sacrifice, strength, and a conviction that one day it can again stand tall. It can live with freedom and hope. The very same layers that make up the city's most famous resident. Gotham City, where justice never sleeps.
Good game.
Thanks, Goose. There's something a bit special about the way the driving makes you feel in Grid 2. It makes you sit up and pay attention, want to push that line, and be a better driver each time you hop behind the wheel.
Race Driver Grid came out in 2008 and perfectly hit that sweet spot between arcade and simulation racing. Grid 2 does everything better. The single-player campaign is set around a new world racing series which merges different styles of racing together in one big event. The aim is to find a superstar racer, which is you.
I see you've been making waves across the racing community with your videos.
As you progress through the game, you'll go around the world, gathering fans and picking up sponsors and other interested racing championships.
Divi Zero are specialists in time attack.
The events are tied together nicely with this idea, I thought, Bajo, and I have to say, with less cheese than I was expecting.
Yes, I'm glad they left the cheese with the Dirt series, although there are still a few awkward moments.
You're saying that they need a superstar.
If we can find a personality and a super Uber driver who has such skill to be the best in the world, then that's just going to be a massive, massive hit.
I'm glad you still get to pick your name from a list, though.
Okay, Jose.
There's over 80 tracks spread across 14 locations, and it's so pretty. We reviewed this on 360 and PC, and when everything's on full in 1440p and you've got all the reflections in the bonnet, I couldn't stop staring at the bonnet and getting distracted, and all the lighting and then the smoke everywhere. The smoke's so pretty.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely stunning.
Pretty.
I think they've really been able to push things further visually from the last game with bigger environments and more detailed looking cars as well. And part of this is with the removal of cockpit view, and this will be a letdown for some, but apparently with the stat tracking data, it showed that only 5% of players actually use this, and it really does use some considerable processing power, especially to render all those car interiors. So while it's sad to see it go, I think it was the right decision. The game is better for it.
Yeah, I agree. Also, I'm normally a third-person guy, but I really like the bonnet cam for some reason in this grid. Just the height of it and the ebb and flow of the camera in general actually is pretty good.
There's such variety in how these tracks feel as well, so you never get tired of the events. And now and then you'll let loose on wide open circuits where you can really put your foot down and see how fast these cars can actually go.
Going off-road even just a little bit is terrifying. Those trees in the forest, it's just like Return of the Jedi. You'll also fly off your fair share of cliff faces, and even the slight jutting of a barrier or rock face can cause an untimely end. And the other drivers are just as terrifying, especially in those tight circuit races.
That got you the objective.
The AI do drive professionally, and they will be careful to try and avoid you, hesitating in realistic ways. But even they make mistakes, and pile-ups and spin-outs will happen, and they feel natural and organic. It just feels right that the AI should stuff up as well.
Yeah, and I love that little indicator in the bottom of your screen to let you know that someone is right on your tail. I would say Grid is as much about overtaking as defending your position, especially online. We didn't get all the way to the top tier events, but we tried some custom races with McLarens and Indy cars. Oh, those Indy cars, Bajo, so fast and fragile.
Yes, I was happy to stay in last place in those events.
The hallmark of this developer's racing games is definitely the rewind feature, and they've smoothed that out a lot since the last game.
Nearly into the top 3.
For me, I think the best thing about the rewind feature is that it just makes you take more risks. I mean, you really start to push those corners when you know you have that limited safety net there.
Good, let's push for first.
Yeah, and that's the core of this game, isn't it? The risk-taking. And you just feel like you've earned it when you've made a really tight pass perfectly. And I think that's why this mechanic has been used so often ever since the first Grid came out.
I did find it a little bit frustrating that they start you out with a rear-wheel drive car, though, because they're much more difficult to control, and you're stuck with it for ages.
Yeah, I always struggle with them too. At least it's not like Need for Speed Shift though, where they were just a nightmare to control and one hit and it goes all over the place. I think they nailed the difficulty though. Medium is tough, but it's the right kind of tough because you need to retry maybe 2 or 3 times to get even a decent place.
First place never feels out of reach, just that you have to work for it, which is bang on, I think. Plus, I love how aggressive the AI get in those face-off races.
Yeah, that came out of nowhere because they're so clean and professional in the other races, and suddenly it's on.
That overtake promo race, though, was really tough, where you have to chain together clean passes of other vehicles to multiply your score.
Yeah, either we don't understand something about how that mode works, or the AI is totally cheating. I think they're cheating. And most of all, I love the drift mechanic because it's just that one step complicated from your average arcade racer.
Yeah, I do like that you can't just jump in and slide around corners. There really is that next level of finesse needed, so you're always thinking about your speed coming into the turn and the right moment to pull out.
You especially feel that handling when you brake suddenly as you're coming into a turn and the car just shudders. Car damage is detailed and fantastic too, and everything crashes into each other like it should.
Yeah, you lose the right amount of control from a shunt or a spin out, but not enough to frustrate you. And when your car gets damaged too much, it'll start pulling to one side or overheating, and you'd better hope you have a rewind up your sleeve or you'll be scraping over the finish line. You know, I thought I'd hate having real damage turned on, but I think they've balanced it really well.
I think the sound design is worth mentioning. You'll hear whoops from the crowd and music playing as you speed around the tracks. But the difference of your engine noises as it struggles uphill, for example, really make you sit up and take notice. Although, Hex, I look forward to the day where we have enough spare power in our consoles to render reactive and realistic crowds that scream and run from your inevitable crashes.
Yeah, for now I'm happy to just stick with white shirt, repeat dude going like this.
Watch your space out there.
One of the few criticisms of the last game was the lack of online features and the lack of split screen. Well, split screen is back on both PC and console. Along with upgrading your vehicles, the game tracks the stats of your friends' times, just like Need for Speed's auto log. And you can compete in global challenges which change each week. Plus there's YouTube integration for sharing videos, which is always appreciated.
We couldn't test out all the online functionality because the game wasn't live at the time of review. But I was able to get a couple of hours in a multiplayer session with the developers who were all the way in the UK, and surprisingly little lag considering how far away they were. The lobby system worked well, and there's some interesting ideas, such as the live route system, where the track changes as you play, so it means it's more about who's the better driver as opposed to who knows the track the best. Also, I think the devs were pretty competitive and serious about their racing, and my mostly unintentional rough and tumble approach to racing caused some muted grief.
Luckily, one of the best features of the game is how it tracks your collisions and things like when you brake for corners.
You've been getting a reputation for your aggressive starts. It's not what we want.
Your driving style is represented by an icon above your vehicle, so now everyone can see the crazy drivers. I'm not sure that was explained very well in the game, though.
It's such a great feature. I wish it was implemented in real life, though.
Yeah. This is a classy racer with slick presentation, and much like their last few races, you can really tell that Codemasters are listening to their community. It really is a perfect sequel. I'm giving it 9 cats in a basket with prancing unicorns. It really is the perfect sequel. I'm giving it 9 out of 10 rubber chickens.
I'm giving it 9.5.
Good game.
So did you guess the game for this week? It was Full Auto from 2006. Developed by Studio Interactive, it was a vehicular combat racing game that featured destructible environments. It was one of the first driving games to incorporate a rewind mechanic in some of the races.
Next week, remember me?
How could I forget you, Hex?
Activation.
And we answer the call of Juarez.
You want a gun at Silas Greaves, and someone will die.
Don't forget, if you missed the show, there's loads of ways you can catch up with mobile apps and iView and YouTube.
So until next week, may all your cats be well fed and dewormed. Bajo out.
Hex out. You know, Goose just got a little kitten.
I know. I bet it has worms though.
He called it Lando.
All little cats have fleas and worms when you get them.
Welcome to the family, Lando.
Welcome. Yeah. Deep flea and worm schedule.
I'm sure it's
Moment
fine.
you get it.
And I'm sure Goose is on top of all of that.
Goose comes in here with worms.
It's really cute.
I was right.
The point is, it's a
I
kitten
was
and
right.
it's adorable and it's lovely.
Goose has worms.